Hello Maria and welcome to our program. We see 2022 coming to an end, and 2022 was European Year of the Youth because of the situation. COVID still going on, war in Ukraine, energy crisis. We didn't hear, unfortunately, much of the youth voices. You're the Vice President of European...
Board member.
Board member, okay, I'm sorry, and the candidate for the President of European Youth Forum. From your point of view, why at this moment in Europe the voice of young people is important?
It's important because we are not only the future of society, as many times we hear, but we are also the present. We have so many needs and our rights are not fulfilled. And we are actually, for example, right now at the group of age at most risk of poverty and social exclusion. So we are this kind of group that we need to be taken care of. And we feel that we are not heard by institutions. They are not really trying to get engaged with us or not trying to listen to our voices.
We hear the voices from the old guard, from the politicians, either nation states or Brussels, talking about the future, talking about youth as the future, talking about our strategic goal of, I don't know, EU climate neutral continent, building our resilience, building our democracies, values, human rights, rule of law. What's the concept in which you see the voice of the youth can be heard more in these times where they are decisive for our future and for your future?
Well, in all the fields actually, but for example, we were part of the Conference on the Future of Europe, and that was an important step, and actually the outcomes of the Conference on the Future of Europe very much target young people. They talk about the fair internships, for example, they talk about quality standards for employment for young people, they talk about youth participation, to increase the mechanisms to have an impact assessment on all the policies and how they will affect young people. So for example, this process, I think it was a good practice because many young people, representatives of civil society were engaged there. And now we have the conclusion. So what are we doing with the outcomes of the Conference of the Future of Europe? That's actually what we want to see in the upcoming months.
For now, it seems nothing, but okay, let's be optimistic. You mentioned a lot of things. We're going to talk about a lot more concerning young people, but I want to talk about participation. You yourself, you're Spanish, you're active, of course, in pan-European way. Not all young people are active. Not all of young people, even though they care about things, they understand what's going on, they're afraid how will they find a job or what will happen to them or about their, digital security, whatever subject, mental health. How do you engage youth?
Yeah, let me say first that many young people actually, they don't know participation at all, because we don't learn about this. We don't learn about this at school, for example. That should be one of the first places in which we can engage in decision making around us. So this is crucial, that we have citizenship education, that we have participation education at the high schools, and also that we have the channels to participate and that institutions promote them. So I think this is really, it's a right of young people, and it's the responsibility of institutions to promote that participation. I've met many young people that say, oh wow, I love what you did when you were 14 years old. I wish I had that opportunity. And I was like, I'm really sorry that many people didn't get even the chance to get engaged in youth organizations or in youth clubs, because unfortunately we don't have all of us the information, and that's still, as I said, a responsibility of public institutions.
Our today's world is changing very fast. We see acceleration, be it in everyday life, technology. We don't know what happened yesterday. We have new things coming out. In that regard, you mentioned education. These are big systems, slow systems. Reforms are always, hard to implement. But what are the tips maybe to have some new form of education for this new age where basically participation of the youth can be on some kind of equal footing with the teachers? Because sometimes we have teachers who cannot teach in the contemporary circumstances.
Yeah, I think one of the main problems that we had in education is that still we have a system in which the teacher is only talking to the audience, but it's not trying to engage with the audience in any sense. And I think this was a bit of the change that also the pandemic brought, new methods to teach, new technologies, using even some programs, some applications. And I think that's very good, that also teachers have thought on how can we do this differently? How can we do something that is more practical and that young people can engage differently on this way of learning? So they learn more by doing instead of just receiving information and studying it for a test.
You mentioned two things very important, exclusion and inequality. Can you give me some example throughout the European continent where these phenomena, which are global phenomena, are the most evident? In which societies, in which cases did you see them like most blatantly?
I think we can see that very clearly with Roma population, and I think that's an issue we really need to tackle. In many European countries, Roma young people are even at 90% at risk of poverty, so that means almost all of them. So, for example, there are some collectives that are more vulnerable to this situation, but in general, we can see that also for the general youth. So, many young people are also, even when they are in a work situation, so they are poor because their wages are really low. So, this in-work poverty is a thing in Europe and especially in the south of Europe. So we need to tackle the wages of young people, we need to tackle precariousness, employment, we need to tackle the temporary jobs that are not wanted by young people.
One of the biggest messages which came out from the Conference of the Future of Europe, especially from the contingent of people which were young, was the state of the mental health. You've mentioned it. We see that all over situation is not good concerning mental health. But why is this such a pressing and urgent matter for young Europeans?
For young Europeans, the problem with mental health is that it's also linked with the social and economic circumstances that we are living. So if we don't have good quality employment, then for sure we will be struggling. If we are not able to emancipate because we are not finding a house, because the prices are too high, for sure we will have some worries, for sure we will have stress, for sure we will have anxiety. Because we see that our prospects in life are not a thing, that we cannot realize our life projects. So that was the situation even before COVID. With COVID we saw that it impacted young people the hardest. And now that's why we have seen in the public debate that mental health is an issue, especially for young people, but it was an issue even before. So that's what I want to highlight. And for sure, mental health and mental well-being is very, very much interlinked with the social and economic circumstances that we are living in.
Some also connect this and other forms of, problems that we have in our societies with, let's not just say social media, but with disinformation, misinformation, not finding, right channels to express yourself, cognitive biases, everything, influencing that we have over the internet. So how do you see youth resilience towards disinformation?
Well, I think we still have a challenge in terms of education for this digitalization. So building the digital skills is still something that we need to work on through the education system, but also through other organizations working on education. And unfortunately, it's true that not all young people are digitally literate. That means that we still don't know how to use the tools that we have, as we don't know as society in general. So I think this is a real challenge for our society, as it is also tackling how algorithms work and how young people we can see the content that we want in social media, how we can, for example, also report when we are being harassed in social media that affects especially young women.
Some scholars, I heard, call this Generation Z or whatever unreachables. Why?
Really?
That they cannot reach them because they're, always here, not there, and they cannot, get into trace of their, habits or what they want, or their political preferences, if you want.
Actually, I could say that exactly because they are with the phone every day in their hands, they are quite reachable, and we can know a lot of information about them. Actually, that's also one of the problems in the digital era that we are living in, that we have almost all our information is recorded in some internet, we have some internet records about it. And how companies, digital companies and technological companies are using our data. It's something that concerns us.
And some other actors, of course, and that is also have some kind of influence towards our democracies. Talking about democracy, another guy told me that young people want to participate, but they don't vote much. You know, that they're on the election as we knew it in the analog age, where you go out one Sunday and put the paper in the ballot box. They're maybe not, let's say, impressed by the system of representative democracy, political parties. How do we change democracy in the digital era, and how do we, talk to young people about politics?
I think there are different schools regarding how young people participate also with the ballot, because, for example, at the European elections, we could see that young people were actually voting more. But yeah, indeed, I think that in many countries, young people, because of the situation that they are facing, they have some disaffection to institutions, to formal institutions, because we are seeing every day that our rights are not being fulfilled, that we don't have a job, that we are struggling with our education, that we cannot emancipate. So for sure, young people are still feeling like, okay, but what are they doing for me? So I think that's the first thing that we need to tackle. But then regarding participation and democracy, I truly believe that in the education systems, we need to promote this. We need to teach more on how the democratic states work. Because this is also a thing, like anti-democratic movements have been rising all across Europe, and they are growing more and more. And what we are seeing as well is that the civic space for citizens, for civil society organizations is decreasing, is shrinking in these years. So we also need to make sure that we have the channels to participate in the way that we want. And that's also what is happening with young people. Probably some traditional channels are not working anymore. Some are still working. But okay, let's find new ways with young people. How do they want to participate? How do we want to participate? We are not being asked about this. And I think this is something that youth that institutions should ask more young people.
What do you feel on the ground? Are young Europeans, or those who are going to be first-time voters in 2024, after all this that happened to us, and pandemic and the war and everything they are now seeing with their own eyes, what kind of kids are these kids, these 16, 18-year-olds? Are they, you know, as every generation has its own, differences? Do they have something specific carrying with them? You're all around Europe from north to south. How do you see this new Europeans?
I'm very much against of this picture of young people that are not caring about society, or that they don't believe in the system at all. Because we also see young people in the streets asking for measures against the climate crisis. We also can see in the statistics of Eurostat, for example, that we care about employment, that we want to end poverty. So, I mean, young people are actually fighting in different ways. Probably we are not in the same channels as policymakers, but we are also asking for changes in the streets, also in the policy-making room, but also like in social media. How many influencers are also spreading very good messages and raising awareness on societal topics. So I think we also need to pay attention to that.
What does Europe means to young people?
I think Europe means optimism, but at the same time, I think it means still optimism. Because actually during these last 2 years, I would say, with the pandemic, we have seen some measures that are actually very relevant for young people. And I must say that in the last years, we have seen that young people are more present in the political agenda of the European Union as well. I think the European Year of Youth, okay, that was a name, but also it has changed something in the mentalities of policymakers. So I'm optimistic about it, and I hope really that this will continue in the upcoming years. It's true that we have not had super big changes, but I don't know, for example, the new youth guarantee, the reinforced youth guarantee, I think that brings optimism to young people.
And for the end, your formation was in international relations, African studies. We see how huge changes we are witnessing on our continent, but our continent is getting older. Demography is also a big challenge for all of us. We have on our south continent, which is very propulsive, in Africa until 2050 we have 1 billion young people younger than 35. How do we engaged with youth, migrant and refugee population coming to Europe. We had different models, but now today these kids can also be our European kids.
Yeah, I think this is one of the challenges that we have in society, also in youth organizations, to be more diverse and represent all young people that are living in our countries. And I feel that sometimes the perception that we have from young people from a migrant background is that they are just covering those employments, those jobs opportunities that we don't want. And that's not the approach that we should have. We should embrace all those people that are coming to Europe, all those people with a migrant background, to make the best also out of them as any other European, to be able to progress in our education system and to have whichever job that they would like to. So I think I would also battle a bit this conception that they are just coming to take the jobs or to support the societies that we have. Because no, I mean, I really wish that diversity in this common place in Europe, and I think we can also benefit a lot from that, not only thinking about how we are going to maintain our society.
Do you trust politicians?
I do. I decided to do, because I think that's the way forward. I mean, trusting institutions, trusting the people that are there, but I think also civil society organizations, we still have a role, asking them what belongs to us, asking them for more, and also criticizing what they are not doing well. And that's our role in the Youth Forum as well.
And just, what politics in which you believe, not in terms of ideology, but in terms of values, needs to have for you to trust them?
For me, what is very, very, very important is the compromises between different political ideologies, different groups, and actually that's for me an example of from the European Parliament. I can see that very diverse ideologies, even in the same political groups, they are super diverse, and for me that's an example on how politics should work. Like reaching agreements between different kind of people, because that's actually our society. It's very diverse, so we also need to represent that.
And for the end, your message to the young Europeans, for those who will, enter the arena of their democratic right exercise to vote in 2024, what should they aim for, what should they look upon and look at?
The very first thing is knowing their rights. And from there, they can do whatever, because once you know your rights, you know what you should demand too. So yeah, the first thing would be know your rights and be active.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivana.